right. Well, we've got a quorum here and there might be more trickling in, but again, I want to be respectful of everyone's time. Thank you so much for joining us for this webinar on ecosystem chatbot. My name is Kevin Carter. I'm the Director of Business Development for Ecomap Technologies. I'll be helping to moderate this panel or this conversation with Ben Carsley on our team and Brian Marshall, the BCL of Texas, who each have a distinct role and role to play when it comes to creating and implementing the chatbot for the ecosystems. So I'll set the stage here with a quick story because I was around when the inspiration for the ecosystem chatbot really hit our founder Pava. I was doing a call one day in the office. It was a little bit later in the afternoon. It was a call with the gentleman from the West Coast, and I just took it with the headphones off, and it was just me and Pava in the office. And I'm going through the demo of our ecosystem platform, and he's liking what we're doing, but they already have this big guide of information, like this 100-ish page PDF full of links and resources and organizations. And he's like, we already have the data, right? It's been mapped, but what do we do with it? How do we actually make this a little bit more accessible? And we were like talking through some ideas, and it's a bit of an older gentleman, but he's pretty tech savvy. And he asked me the question, he's like, have you ever thought of creating your own GPT? And I'm sitting there and like, well, actually, I haven't thought of that. And also, no one would want, I'm just a biz dev guy. No one would want me to do that. And then Pava's sitting in the background. I see her perk up, and we end up having this like hour-long conversation after the call. And over the course of that weekend, she built the MVP of our ecosystem chatbot, which was definitely an MVP in many respects, but really directionally where we wanted to go in order to be able to help people that actually have a lot of information already and need this idea of like this 24/7 concierge, just pointing people in the right direction based off the data that they already have, or combining that with new data that we can map out for them as well. So that was maybe a year and a half, 2-ish years ago, where the seed first got planted. And then since then, our team's been really hard at work at really iterating and trying our best to perfect this product for the ecosystem use case. So I'm excited to show both sides of the story of how that works when it comes to implementing it and when it comes to keeping it fresh and current for our customers. So first, I will ask both Ben and Brian to do some brief introductions about themselves, their role, and the organization that they are representing today. So Ben, can you take it away?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Kev, for that introduction. That was great. Yeah, so my name's Benjamin. Or Ben, either's fine. I am a data and machine learning engineer at Ecomap. I was responsible for building this from the ground up with Pava, and really from pretty much day two past the MVP. So yeah, that's my role. Anytime that you work with us or work on your EcoBot, I had some hand in that.
Yes, absolutely. And Brian, can you introduce yourself and your organization as well?
Sure, Brian Marshall, and I'm the Chief Programs Officer at Business Community Lenders of Texas, or BCL. And I guess to piggyback on with this, I kind of sometimes the guinea pig or the canary in the coal mine to help kind of test some of these concepts out.
Yeah, for some ecomap lore context, Brian was one of our biggest early champions in helping us get to Dallas. And now we've got quite a few ecosystems throughout the state of Texas that we're helping to map out, and with our chatbot to support entrepreneurs, especially that are looking to get access to more resources in addition to the capital that BCL provides. So Ben, you mentioned you were really a part basically from that first like weekend sprint onward of helping to create the chatbot, and it has come a very, very long way. When I say MVP, it was very minimally viable, but we learned a lot, and you learned a lot when it comes to developing this. Could you walk through the process of what it was like to take that initial MVP and build on something that we could actually introduce to customers and provide value across the board? What did that journey look like?
Yeah, it was an interesting journey. For context, my background is in linguistics and library sciences. So it's originally what I did before I was an engineer. I'm a self-taught engineer. I learned most of the work that I actually do now here at this job and really grew with the team. So EcoBot was like a big part of that building out of new data infrastructure and ways of graphing knowledge and making information more accessible. We were really just experimenting and doing research and development alongside the open source machine learning field at that time, because Pava had this realization like super, super early. Like DaVinci 3 was just accessible to the public. And so when OpenAI started really pushing these new base models, we started to like also run to market. because Pava really didn't waste time. And so, yeah, we started building like successful sort of working MVPs, and then eventually getting that production ready was a lot of work because we wanted to be compliant and we wanted to be sort of secure and private about how users were going to have access to data and where data really lived and where, say, user data lived and things like that. These were all like emergent concerns in the field of machine learning at the time. So yeah, it was really an interesting process. And I think, we did it as fast as we could while still doing everything in a secure way and prioritizing, data quality and truthfulness, which I think a lot of startups in AI these days are, okay about. But I think we take truthfulness and accuracy really seriously here. And that's what kind of sets this whole system apart.
Amazing. That's really a context for the kind of the values that we're trying to aspire to and the value prop of what we're trying to build. So I think it might be easier to show rather than tell. I would love to get a peek behind the curtain of what a chatbot looks like on the admin side, and as well as what an implementation I think you have a few different use cases lined up to really show like what it can do and the different ways it can be used to support an ecosystem.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go for it. So I think I'm good to screen share. Yeah, I am. Awesome. So yeah, I'm just gonna open up Firefox real quick, minimize everything. Can everyone see this okay? Is this all
Yep.
good? Okay, awesome. So yeah, this is Elena. This is actually the BCL bot. And so Elena is good at a few different things based off of the data that we've provided her from the ecomap related to Elena. So let's just start with a simple one. We're imagining sort of a user path where someone's actually a first-time homeowner and they're looking for more information, right? So this would be very much for like your end user, sort of around the clock. This bot can live embedded on your website and can give really fast, real-time answers. And this information, as you can tell, is all source cited. So all of this stuff, contact information, all of that info comes directly from the data that you generate with us when you buy an ecomap or buy data from us. This is all that curated data that we have, generated from the web, and from other sources that you can provide your ecobot, and we'll look at how that process works in just a second. But as you can tell, it's really good at actually citing things like even a LinkedIn page and stuff like that. And it gives you sort of action items to follow up if you want, right? With like contact info. So yeah, this is the sort of one major user path. You can also, follow up more or less. So we could say, yeah, how could I get a one-time coaching session? I don't even know the answer to this question myself because I haven't really looked through this data set, but let's follow up since it said that it could help us with one-on-one coaching. So sure. Awesome. Yeah. And there we go. We get a few coaching opportunities, right? So it really can sort of guide you through the data set that you provide it and make that data more accessible to users sort of instantly just by asking like natural questions. You don't have to be super, verbose with it. And it's able to do that search through your data and then return you truthful, like validated information that you're sure about. So it's not just like going out on the web and looking up random stuff like ChatGPT. You also can give it like feedback, which it does, by the way, help us. So ever interacting with one, please give us feedback. You can download your chat log, which I know a lot of end users really like because they have all of these links, right? So then they can save away all of this copy to, come back and consult later as a text file. That's one way of approaching Elena. You can also just very simple, help me find funding. Like it doesn't have to be super elaborate. The bot is designed to follow up and further narrow the conversation, right? It's immediately starting to ask for specific types of loans or grants that you're interested in. It gives you information right off the bat, but it wants to narrow down that search and help you find the most relevant information to your use case. I'll use the Enoch Pratt bot for a good, very like specific use case here that I always like asking about, which is student entrepreneurship, which is something, Pava cared a lot about, obviously as a student entrepreneur. And this is trained on a data set from the Baltimore ecosystem. So there's a bunch of information from the local Baltimore community. And this one is designed to really give you like a thorough game plan. And so you see, you get like a ton of really useful, rich resources here, citations to all of them, job career fairs, like you can check out our eco maps as well. And it has information it's tied into from your actual ecomap itself, can redirect users to go look at that information there, and provides you nice detailed follow-up questions as well. The other thing I'll highlight, like the last thing I'll highlight in this sort of walkthrough before we kind of pause, take some questions and get some feedback, is that a lot of people have asked us about accessibility. And so obviously we wanted to prioritize accessibility in the browser. So I'm going to stop using my mouse at this point, and I'm just going to be hitting the tab character on my keyboard, and I'm able to actually bounce around. So Firefox is great about showing and highlighting this. And you can see I'm beginning to bounce around my bar, and then it will lock me in here, and I can actually tab through every single source and citation it provides you, as well as navigating to your search bar as well. So you can go through all of this stuff. You can see all of this. All of this is able to be interacted with. We can tab through all of this really quickly, and then we can get to our search bar, which is great. So you have total tab interaction with the site. So accessibility is not really a concern. And it also works in multiple languages as well. I actually don't have any queries lined up for that. I'm realizing I forgot to do that. But yeah, it also works in Spanish and French, which we've tested. And we're willing to talk with other people about other languages they're interested in supporting. So yeah, that is the high level overview of how an EcoBot works, what that user experience is like. Kev, I'm going to throw it back to you because I've been talking for too long. I'm an engineer.
Cool.
Can I chime in real quick, Kevin,
Yeah, please
from
do.
the other side of this? So what Ben is showing is the back end. So Kevin, it's probably a segue in. When you go back and what BCL was looking at, and as you look at these different examples, what we were looking at and what you should be looking at is the different behavior types of the types of clients you're working with. So if you notice with the BCL site, we have home ownership, we have small business, we have personal finance. What we're using the chatbots for is we notice the behavior of a home ownership client will search and look for certain things, and the behavior of a small business client is different than that of someone looking for personal finance. So what you can also look at with the types of questions is the behaviors, how these different behavior types think, and that'll help you adjust your chatbot to what they need as well. Just wanted to chime in with that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
actually,
that's super helpful. And I'll Ben will be able to show the admin side in a hot minute. But
yeah.
one thing I wanted to ask you first, Brian, too, like what are those types of questions you get? That are probably, as someone that I used to work with a lot of student entrepreneurs, and you
Yeah,
tend to get 3 to 5 questions make up 80% of what you get asked. What
you
does that
get
look
it.
like?
Yeah, you
Yeah.
got it on head. Show me the money. That's so our questions tend to be more of, hey, where can I get funds? Right. Which is the number one question we get overall. And then it does fall into sometimes the home ownership questions or the personal finance questions. But that's the note. Since we are a lender, the number one thing people are looking for is show me the money.
Yeah. Yeah, we get that all the time too. Even, I just had this idea yesterday. How can I get $1 million for it? It's like, well, you can actually, and one thing that might be able to show too is that you can actually have the chatbot be more consultative as opposed to, let me just show you all these resources. It can actually work to understand, be a little bit more Socratic and probing before just saying, here's the money. It's like, well, what type of money are you even ready for it?
Yeah.
So with that, yeah, I'd love to see, again, a walkthrough on the other side of how an admin would be able to set up and configure a chatbot to make sure it reflects the brand of their ecosystem and the responses they want to provide.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll do a quick walkthrough of a couple of things here on the admin panel. This is your like admin center in general. You get a login to this when you make an EcoBot, or when you buy one, it'll send you like your login information. You can get access here. This is where you'll get some general high level insights. A lot of this is actually, sort of just like the tip of the iceberg of what we can actually really get from this information, but we wanted to do everything sort of with security first. So this is the insights we're willing to aggregate right now, but it's actually pretty descriptive, right? Like you can get the top recommended assets. These are assets in the data set of this one particular stamp bot. I love showing this one simply because we also get a really beautiful map of the world in this way. We get this wonderful heat map all over the world of where it's being used, which is really cool. And you get breakdowns by frequency, You're told sort of how long the duration of these conversations are on average. This is all really, I think useful information about how your users are actually behaving and interacting on your website where this is embedded. You also get summative logs. So in a moment, we'll get like a page. It'll show us sort of all the logs recently of the bot, and all of that. You can see it's just sort of generalized and summarized so that there aren't private user details. Like if someone included like personal information or an address, we would remove that. So you just sort of get a high level summary of what this information looks like. And then I'm going to switch over real quick to Elena so that we can take a look at appearance, and actually talk about that. Because one of the nice things about this is you get to also customize, what the footer looks like, what your colors look like, what the avatar is, as well as that. And you also get the ability to customize responses. And so this is a bit what Brian was talking about with a greeting, additional instructions you can provide the bot. So if you have, I really like what BCL has done with their bot in general, because they've sort of throttled that information at the start, and they've asked it to be a little bit more discerning and say, hey, just give it a couple recommendations at the start, but really just probe and ask the user, like, what are they really looking for before you like inundate them with information. And there's just sort of little, yeah, like through practice and learning your user behavior, like what the sort of ideal user path is for a conversation, that can really help you sort of optimize how the chat assistant is interfacing with your users. So yeah, and you also get sort of default response modes. In general, recommend helps the best, but if you really want to clamp down and be like, no, I really want it to be like intense about not recommending stuff right at the start. If you have a particular use case that makes sense, the other modes, answer and consult, can also sometimes provide better results depending on what your use case is. So yeah, we try to work with you and give you advice as best as we can to match up your use case to how you should configure your bot. And you can change this at any point in real time, and it'll update on the bot itself, like instantaneously. So yeah, that's the high level of the admin configuration side. And then the last thing I'll show that I just think is so cool, because I spent a lot of time building this myself on how all of this really works on the back end. We have the ability to add any website, to add a collection of websites, like web pages from a single domain, to add a document like a PDF. We use computer vision to process the text on that PDF to a document that we can provide to the model. And you can also bulk upload assets to the eco data process, our automated AI process, via a CSV. So you have a lot of different options for how you can add data in a number of different ways. And then this data becomes essentially consolidated like this, where you have, some contact information if provided, you have some like stuff and information about the asset itself, and you have the ability to view it, the ability to make it visible, and also to prioritize it. So if you have like partner organizations that you want to be high up in the results, you can go ahead and prioritize those. So yeah, that's the high level of how all of this works. I hope that's answers most of those questions, Kev.
Yeah, no, it's super helpful and what I wanted you to walk through. And again, this is not what the MVP looked like at all. So I want to give Ben their flowers for being able to take this concept of what if we made ChatGPT for ecosystems, and really getting a lot of feedback as we were rolling this out, and guinea pigs like Brian for being willing to take the chance and say, hey, this actually feels very valuable, and we want to make sure it's something that can provide that value across the board. So a question I do have for Brian is, how did you go about the branding and the coming up with like what you wanted Elena to be able to do? Because you did have maybe even a lot more options than you were first expecting to be able to do that.
Well, first of all, we did look at our client base, and actually Elena has some history behind it. It's actually, we had a different avatar at first, and this avatar is actually the avatar of our CEO's mother. So we took some time really to find an avatar that fit what we wanted. Now, another piece here, and Ben may not know this, or the conversation was getting your chatbot to actually respond in ways that you wanted to. So, fun fact, Ben, saying howdy partner. Well, well partner, we had to work to get it to not do that all the time. But that's the cool thing, right? It can learn, right? To adjust to go, okay, we're not going to say howdy partner or well buddy, right? So, but the key thing for us, what we were looking for, I think Kevin, you're going to hit on this as well. BCL gets inundated quite a bit with requests. So I think, Kevin, when we were talking, this is more around improving efficiency. Time costs money, and it's about reducing the amount of time that my direct reports and others have to take and fill some of these basic questions. So that's a key piece of how this can help as well. Can you get it to pull basic questions, phone calls that come in, emails that come in. BCL, we get about just inquiries alone, 4,500 to 5,000 annually. So part of this is reducing that time and making BCL more efficient. And we can see that in the cost savings because we can redirect those resources to something else. Hopefully that helps.
Yeah, well, that would be a lot of meetings and a lot of email responses in order to answer some things that are probably publicly known. And one question we often get, and I'd love both of you to have your take on this, is, well, okay, if this chatbot, does this replace people, right? Or does it augment the work that they do? So I love for both of you to give a quick take on that.
Yeah, it's interesting. I guess, we've talked about this, Kev. I feel this way in general because I work on all of our machine learning systems and infrastructure, which didn't really exist a few years ago. That what I've seen is just the team grow with it because we use these assistants internally as well, right? And we also use our own forms of automation and machine learning tools to automate a lot of the work that previously was done by a group of people and experts. And so I think what in general it allows people to do is be treated more like experts and to become experts more in their domain and to allow for rudimentary work and stuff that's highly repetitive to sort of fall by the wayside and to be something that can be automated out the way that Asana is better than like keeping your own to-do list by hand and then everyone sending each other their to-do list. Like Asana is a better automation to manage tasks and it makes us all faster and it's great. And I feel like this tool is very similar, where it's able to manage repetitive tasks incredibly well, and save you time that otherwise you'd be spending like answering dozens and dozens of emails. My buddy last night was asking me pretty much, could I somehow have you teach me how to have something answer cold call emails for me? It was a very similar problem where he's a photographer and he's like, I just don't have time to reach out to everyone. And he's just like an artist and wanted a tool to automate his own problem with, email ingress and answering questions and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, I think it has applications in a number of fields. And I've been mostly shocked at how many different use cases it's already been applied to in under a year.
Yeah, you probably didn't think you'd be mapping out or responding to the stamp collecting ecosystem when you first came on board.
I just really thought like when that first happened, I was just like, we're gonna try, and if it doesn't work, I'm sorry, but I didn't design it to do this. We'll see. And it worked so well, and that's like kind of been the most alarming thing about all of this work. It's just like making something, thinking you did like an okay job, and then finding out after the fact that it's like incredibly applicable to a bunch of different things you didn't know or even have knowledge of yourself as a human. And like I don't know anything about stamps, and now some software that I wrote is able to open source tons of information about stamps. And I think that's really cool. There's a lot of just cool data sets that we get to work with that I learn a lot from.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Well, it doesn't replace the people. So for BCL, a lot of the initial inquiries that we get around funding or what we call tire kickers, it's just a basic question. Uh, that that's what the chatbot can help do. It's just that initial. But then from there, it also can make the recommendation after they've got that information, they come back. This is not, chatbot is not designed for them to sit there and interact with this thing for 5, 10, 20 minutes, right? that's not the behavior we are looking for. It's just a quick reference to get them started. And it's really like the initial engagement. It's kind of like a person and usher at the movies. Where do you want to sit and move you through? And again, as I mentioned before, it doesn't replace the actual employees we have. My consultants and program managers have other things, but by the time they do engage them, they've got some initial kind of guidance, or I'm just going to use that term pathway that's kind of preset for them. Hey, I looked this up on your site. Now I want to know more. Then it just helps in further along with the engagement. But and we see this with a small business client versus a home ownership client. Again, the behavior types kind of dictate what they're looking for. Small business owner or startup entrepreneur just wants show me the money.
Mhm.
The home ownership person wants a little bit more nuanced information of can I get into a home? Those kind of questions. Where can I, get a down payment? So just different types. Hopefully that helps answer the question.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can imagine, well, one, there might be people like the tire kickers you mentioned that are maybe never going to physically walk in your door, but then there are people that they do find some bit of information. They get to go down these rabbit holes. When they do walk in your door, they're a little bit better informed about what is out there, what pathways they can take. So you can kind of start at a higher level than like, let's go ground zero and try to explain what we even do here to begin with. So
Exactly. And final piece, Kevin, it's about engagement into the ecosystem in some initial form. So that's the broader scope of it as well.
perfect. Well, I just have one more question for each of you before we open it up to the crowd. So start thinking about those or log them in the Q&A tool as you see there. This is a little bit more of a forward-looking one for each of you. So Ben, I'd love to know, what are you most excited about when it comes to the future of the work that you get to do at Ecomap with some of the AI ML tools and implementing them in the chatbot pathways? Just what's exciting on the horizon from your perspective?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. It's been such a journey to get here and to make this tool that now it's kind of amazing to think like I have the ability to look back and sort of say, okay, what do we want to do next now? Um, I guess I suppose the next really exciting thing is the way that we hope to increase the volume of data accessible to your bot and also this number of sources that that's coming from. Right now, I think we're working like a lot of people are predominantly with information that's just sort of available via the web and via the sort of thing that a human being could like look up, which is cool. But I think that we're beginning to make preparations on the back end to really start supporting a whole variety of different types of data sources that we are also producing and refining ourselves. So, like looking at high level census tract data and looking at all sorts of interesting sort of government generated data sets and things like that that have an enormous amount of insights about trends in ecosystems and just sort of in general ecosystem intelligence about that like large sort of scale shifts in demographics and economic trends. And I think we're hoping that eventually this sort of thing is going to be more integrated with the EcoBot itself. Right now, its essential tools are sources and documents of truth that you provide it. But I think there's also the room in the future to allow it to be more like an agent where it can begin to sort of make its own inferences from the data you provided as well. And that's what I'm really hoping to build out in the future is to give it even more tools to make inferences and assessments for people and just really tailor the quality of that data from a variety of sources.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited about that too. I mean, we've come so long in such a relatively short time period, so I'm excited to keep seeing the iterations that we're making. And Brian, that question for you, and this does not have to be chatbot or ecomap related at all.
Oh,
So
it's
I know,
going to segue in. It'll just
yeah,
segue in. So we actually have three of these platforms of the EcoMap platforms from Dallas, Austin, and then trying to connect into San Antonio. So to Ben's point, what we're looking at is a regional technology-enabled ecosystem. The platform, the engine to this thing is EcoMap. And then when I look at the chatbot features, all the other things, what Ben is getting at is what I'm excited about is the data back-end piece, right? I keep mentioning the behavior types, right? of these different, we are economic development. So we're looking at it from, hey, we have these different services we offer. We have different demographics. We are spanning across right now 600 counties in Texas, right? So for us, it's the exciting piece of the journey that each of these clients can go on. We're going to be incorporating in our home and war for how do you bring in all these other aspects, not just small business, but all these other aspects that we work on. And we're right now, we're the only community development financial institution doing this. And so that's what we're excited about. Final piece is to Ben's point around the data, being able to connect and see the pathway of that particular profile and that client across the journey. That I will say, when Pava started this in 2018, we're engaging, you could not see it. Now you can see the engagements. And the incremental pieces, the chatbot, pathways, all the other features on the back end, which helps guide the organization or where they want to go. You can actually see it real time. We can make better decisions on impact, making our organization more efficient, and more importantly, how we engage you, the community. So hope that's my 2 cents, and I'm sticking to it.
All right, valuable 2 cents and really valuable use of time, I believe. So Ben, thank you so much for taking a break from building and come chatting with us. I'm sure you'll probably get back to it later this afternoon. And Brian, thank you so much for being such a willing and just really helpful guinea pig when it comes to helping make sure we have all this working. And I mean, we have a similar vision for what we want to do all around the country, and you're executing that on the ground across your region in Texas, of being that connective tissue that can be tech enabled, but really human centered in a way that technology will never fully replace. So kudos to each of you. Appreciate your time. Are there any questions from the attendees? We'll hang out for a bit.
Don't be shy. I think they're good.
We'll give it a few more seconds. So maybe you're just trying to figure out the perfect way to articulate what you're trying to ask. Otherwise, we'll call it a session. Three, two, one. All right, I think that'll do it. We'll make sure we get this this clip recorded and we'll have it posted. So everyone that attended, thank you so much. We'll be following up shortly. And Ben, Brian, enjoy the upcoming weekend. Really appreciate y'all. All right, take care. Happy Friday.